Hi, I'm Mayor David Pileski, and welcome to another Fireside Chat. Today, we're excited to welcome Mayor of Elmhurst, Mayor Levin. So thank you so much for coming all the way to Roselle.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor.
So to get us started, can you tell us when did Elmhurst first get home rule?
Well, ours is based on population, so we didn't vote it in, but somewhere between 1950 and 1960, we achieved the $25,000 population cutoff. So we've been a home rule community for quite some time.
And how is home rule panned out for Elmhurst from a government and a policy perspective?
Well, we think it's very important, and a number of times it comes up, and we are looking at decisions that we have to make, and we're glad that we have the home rule power. I'd say one of them in particular is our whole revenue stabilization. I can talk about that a little bit if you like.
Absolutely, that'd be great to hear more about.
I think a lot of people think that home rule, particularly those that are voting in, would lead to an increase in property tax, and we believe that it actually is quite the opposite because it gives us a lot of other financial tools. So we have a homeroom sales tax, and that's kind of important because a lot of people come to Elmhurst from outside, so that sales tax revenue, really supports our community from people outside. We have a hotel motel tax. We have, I don't know if you have hotels or motels here, I'll come out and stay, but that's been important. And we have a food and beverage tax, which is sort of separate from our retail sales tax. So that, again, brings revenue not only from our residents, but the residents are those who want to spend as opposed to are being taxed on their property, and people from outside. We have a gasoline tax. We're, as you are, close to highways, and so people who are coming through are buying gasoline.
You listed off a litany of different things, but I think it might seem scary to residents, but I think those are all very small amounts that are usually collected. And so I know from Roselle's perspective, having the limitations we have to resort to things like a vehicle sticker or other kind of registration fees and using other utility fees on residents. Right. And usually because we have fewer tools, those end up being disproportionately larger of an impact on residents. And instead of spreading out the burden to other people, like you mentioned, visitors or people coming through your town that may use those services or goods, it's only on our residents. And so I think that you highlighted on some really important policy distinctions, right? It is taxes, but it's more how do we tax more efficiently is the way I think about it.
Exactly. And I think, as you know from our work on the Mayor's Association, the state is imposing increasing burdens on our police and fire pensions, and so that can really only be covered through property tax. One of the mayors recently mentioned to me that about 90% of their property tax is going towards police and fire pension. Utility tax, such as on telephones, I don't know not many people have the landlines.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, so you have to replace those with other sources. And it may or may not happen, but sometimes we incur debt through a bond issuance, and a home rule community can pledge for instance, a sales tax source as security for that debt, as opposed to a property tax where if you're not home rule, you couldn't do that.
I think you hit on something that's really important. There's kind of two sides to the coin, I feel like, with home rule. One is it's a lot about financial policy. The other one is you get local control and you can actually kind of make better policies that the state of Illinois otherwise doesn't allow you to. Can you talk a little bit more about how that's played out in Elmhurst?
It's all about the flexibility of how we want to construct things. And so we have businesses, they might want to say, well, we don't want to pay back in this situation over 10, can we take longer to do it? If you're not home rule and you want to do something, you really have to scour the state statutes to see if you're allowed to do it, because you have to find the authority in the statute. If you're home rule, unless the state has preempted by saying you can't regulate in this area, then you've got all the powers generally that the state of Illinois has. And I will also mention, I think there are a number of public safety issues, if I can use that term broadly, that home rule can provide for a municipality. So for instance, we have a more stringent building code.
Okay.
And I don't believe home rule can regulate building code design. It's been important to us. We rarely have a structure fire in our community. Maybe once a year. I think our firefighters get a little bit bored, because there's not as much to do. we recently got a letter from the state about affordable housing and are we in compliance? And irrespective of your opinion on what affordable housing should or shouldn't be, we're kind of exempt from those requirements. We'll respond, but those regulations don't apply to us. We've had some problems with chronic nuisance properties where we see the landlord where we have repeat police calls there. They might be doing things, fights there. So a chronic nuisance ordinance is not something that a non-home rule community can do. It's been important for us. We've had 2 properties in the 12, 13 years I've been on the city council where that's been important. We do a lot of administrative adjudications, which is important not only for the revenue, but to give it a better result for the residents so they're not running off to, in our case, would be Glendale Heights, which is pretty far away. Business licensing is more important to us to make sure we have compliance from businesses. We don't want to over-regulate, but there are certain areas of control. And I guess the last one I'll mention is the whole migrant busing issue, which we've had our maybe 8th bus show up. We have not adopted an ordinance. Some have, but as a home rule community, if we wanted to adopt a regulation of how and when buses may arrive, we can regulate that as a home rule community. So those are just a few ideas of public safety.
Well, I think you hit on 2 really important things. I think one is you can have the best strategy and the best intentions in the world, but sometimes you just get bad businesses or bad property owners, right? Exactly. And so having the ability to really clean up those issues quicker really gives a benefit to the community, because there's nothing worse than having kind of someone taking space up that's preventing something good from coming, right?
And nothing to do with revenue.
Exactly.
It's all about, making it a better community.
Absolutely. And I field a lot of calls from people that have concerns, and it's always frustrating, and I feel like I can't do my job because it's almost like say it's one hand tied behind my back, because unfortunately there's a lot of circumstances where it's like, I agree with you, it's an absolutely horrible thing that's going on, but we as a village can't do anything about that today. But I think the other thing you touched on is really important, is we don't know what the state is going to be dealing with tomorrow, right? I didn't have migrants on my 2023 or 2024, municipal bingo card, and so I think you never know what could come up, and home rule gives you that flexibility to make policies that are right for your community and not have to worry about what Springfield's deciding for all of us.
Well, actually, Springfield deciding is another. There's the paid leave for all workers act, which from our police and fire perspective, I'm not making a policy statement on the law itself, but theoretically, if one of our police officers on the night shift said that he's getting married Friday, and all the officers said we're taking Friday off, we have very little authority to say, well, you can't do that. But that act would say you could. As a home rule community, we exempted ourselves for our municipal employees, particularly public safety employees, from that act. That's something where Springfield came up with it. It might be hard on businesses, not commenting on that, but as a home rule municipality, we were able to exempt ourselves from that.
No, absolutely. Any closing thoughts you'd like to end with about home rule from your experience or your perspective?
Well, Roselle's a sophisticated community. I think, if you have communities where you don't have good government, where you don't have professionally administered government, you're the mayor, but you have a village administrator. If you are a sophisticated community like Roselle, home rule gives a lot of good tools to make the community a better place. And it's really not about finance, it's about the good for the community. So I commend you for taking this on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming out again.
My pleasure.
We'll see you around.
All right, thanks.